Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Week 9 waiver wire targets. So for those of you who are going to be struggling this week, because there are a total of 6 teams on the bye week in Week 9 of the regular season, there are a lot of names to talk about when it comes to free agent waiver wire pickups. So that's exactly what we're going to go over. I'm going to be going over every single position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and even streaming defenses for Week 9 waiver wire. I'm also going to be following it up later on in the video by talking about Week 8 outstanding performances and a couple guys that you might want to look out for, maybe trade for as the season progresses. But in all, we're going to be talking about waiver wire targets for sure. This is the episode, so get your questions ready, and without a doubt, I'll be getting ready to answer them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin, because I know there's a lot to talk about for this coming week. Hey everybody, how's it going? Monday, hope you all are doing well. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there are 6 teams on the bye week. On the top of our screen, we have here the Arizona Cardinals, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Giants, and the Philadelphia Eagles will all be on bye week this week. It is Bye-Pocalypse week. This, if I'm not mistaken, this is the only week in which 6 teams or more are going to be on bye week. Otherwise, usually bye weeks consist of 4 teams. So this is the Bye-Pocalypse. This is when many of us are going to struggle to have to string together lineups, and that's going to force us to go and look at the waiver wire in order to pick up wins. Otherwise, nobody really wants to forfeit games now, especially because we're getting to the end of the season. We're struggling to, catch victories left, right, and center. So as of right now, we have to look to try to pick up wins, especially when other teams are struggling, right? It's not only our teams, but it's other teams struggling, the players that you go against in your leagues. So hopefully I can help you guys out today in order to pick up some good players for Week 9. So let's start with the running back position, because as we all know, championships in fantasy football rely upon the running back unless you have Patrick Mahomes this year. So let's begin with number 1, Aaron Jones. Okay, so here's the deal by Aaron Jones now. I've mentioned him in the past, maybe, 10 times. And I've said, Aaron Jones is great. Aaron Jones should be the starting running back of this team. He came back. Jamal Williams looked bad. Ty Montgomery looked bad. Ty Montgomery this past week didn't do himself any favors. And Aaron Jones should be the lead back. He performed as the lead back last season when Aaron Rodgers was down, and Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams basically were the entire Green Bay Packers offense. Coming back from his 2-game suspension this season, Mike McCarthy wasn't really utilizing Aaron Jones to his maximum potential. And this past week against the Rams defense, he was able to break off a couple good runs. He looked efficient, and he was fantasy productive without a doubt. The guy had 12 carries for 86 yards and a rushing touchdown, and was used in the passing game a little bit, but honestly wasn't effective enough to pick up any yards. 2 receptions, 0 yards. Still points in PPR, so I'll take it. But as of right now, why am I mentioning Aaron Jones? Well, the fact of the matter is, prior to this week, Aaron Jones was not effective at all in fantasy. In fact, he was on many of your guys' drop lists, or he was at the end of your bench and you were beginning to think, perhaps I should drop him in order to maybe get a leg up on the weeks ahead, pick up players that are not going to be affected by weeks going into the next couple weeks. So I instructed some of you, yes, maybe you should drop Aaron Jones. I looked at some of your guys' benches after you've asked questions. When you have a full stack of studs on your bench and Aaron Jones is the only one, you're like, who should I drop for Marlon Mack? It's obviously going to be Aaron Jones, right? So this coming week, if you are struggling at the running back position, without a doubt, I think Aaron Jones, who has already passed his bye week, so rest of season you have his availability and his production. They play against the Patriots this coming week, who in my opinion are a pretty good matchup. And as long as Mike McCarthy continues to hand him off the ball, he out-carried all of the other running backs. Jamal Williams only had 4 carries in one, which was a goal line vulture, which pretty much kept Jamal Williams owners happy. I don't even know if anybody owns Jamal Williams. You probably shouldn't at this point unless you're playing in a dynasty of some sort. But as of right now, Aaron Jones looks like he's going to be the lead back. Hopefully, he had 14 touches total this past week. Hopefully that can stay consistent at about a 15 touch rate. That's where I see it. That's why I have him as The first guy I'm going to mention on the running back list when it comes to free agents for the waiver wire pickup. So Aaron Jones going forward, I like him. I've liked him all season. You guys know that for sure for those of you who have been around. And I think going forward he's going to be great. So that's Aaron Jones. Let's move on to number 2. Okay, there is a possibility that Payton Barber is on your waiver wire. Many of you don't play in big enough leagues to where you need to keep a guy like Payton Barber, because we know Payton Barber has not been great this season. Prior to this week, only had one good fantasy game the entire season, and he followed that up with a garbage game in week 7, and he came back this past week, found himself in the end zone, found himself some relevant points against a Bengals defense that wasn't great. He had 19 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. Here's my only caveat with Payton Barber, because I know many of you are going to need him going forward, because there is going to be injuries left, right, and center. Maybe Michelle owners, guys like that are worrying as of right now. Can I trust Payton Barber? Here's the entire thing. Spoiler alert: Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this Sunday against the Panthers. Now, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was under center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it did not help the production of Payton Barber. Payton Barber was used very, very seldom. But then again, they did play against 3 great rushing defenses, right? They played against the Saints, the Eagles, and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first 3 weeks. So I wouldn't for sure say, okay, he's going to be irrelevant. But I just want to, be careful, guys, because I know this offense for Tampa Bay is going to come out and try to throw the ball with Fitzpatrick as much as they can in order to stay in games. So this coming week against the Panthers, I still think Payton Barber is a good pickup for rest of season. They've gotten past their bye week, so those of you considering needing a running back, Payton Barber is not a bad choice. So let's move on to number 3. If you guys haven't, it's pretty much the same as last week. As of right now, the New Orleans, no. Hello? Andrew, relax. Okay. The New England Patriots game versus the Buffalo Bills game, right? On the TV, yeah, it's still going on as we speak. So I'm not sure if there's anybody in that game that is, completely lost their mind and is taking over and is on the waiver. So as of right now, I have no clue. But other than that, the list of guys that I have on the screen, they're pretty much the only guys that I would consider picking up that aren't really owned. I'm mentioning Jalen Richard and Doug Martin again this week because they both performed well in half-point PPR. They both had almost 10 points. I know Jalen Richard for sure had 10 points. I think Doug Martin, because of a fumble, had around 8 at the end of it. They both looked good, right? They were both used efficiently. Jalen Richard had his 8 receptions for you in the PPR leagues, full-point PPR leagues. Congratulations. Jalen Richard is doing work. And Doug Martin, he looked good. Going forward, he's going to have good matchups. They're going to continue to utilize him as much as they can. I know the Raiders aren't trying to win too many games, but as of right now, these 2 guys playing against the 49ers this week, if you're struggling at the running back position and you need a pickup, Doug Martin, whether it's PPR or standard, he's an okay pickup, but Jalen Richard, he is a for sure PPR guy. In standard leagues, I would definitely not suggest him as a waiver wire acquisition. In fact, he would just be a waste of a pickup in a standard league. So yeah, that's basically it. Let's move on past these 2 of the Raiders, and let's talk about DeVontae Booker. So why is DeVontae Booker's name being brought up? A guy that, honestly, prior to this week, really hasn't had much value, and that's because of the fact that Royce Freeman, the running back for the Denver Broncos, was injured this past week, and Phillip Lindsay, he needs help, right? He can't be the only running back out of the backfield running the ball. He is not built for that. Even though he runs hard every single play, and the dude's yards per carry, it shows when he runs the ball. He runs hard, right? And he can do it consistently, but they don't need it to, completely ruin his body in the first half of the season. DeVonte Booker was utilized a lot this past week against the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And the fact of the matter is he is a receiving back. So for those of you considering, Jalen Richard and aren't able to acquire him, DeVonte Booker, he's used in the passing game. He had himself some very good runs this past week, 9 rushes for 78 yards. Yes, that is a product of the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs defense isn't fantastic. But then again, guys, 4 receptions for 23 yards, that could increase going forward. They use both these running backs, and they use them at a pretty good rate. Phillip Lindsay still was able to carry the ball 18 times and had himself 3 receptions. That did not stop Devontae Booker's 9 rushes on the yards and 4 receptions through the air. So he had about 13 total touches the entire game, broke 100 total yards. So he looked good. He was efficient. For those of you who are considering maybe perhaps a deeper pickup, Devontae Booker could be an answer for your team, especially if you're struggling this week waiver wire wise. Other than these two, other than Devontae Booker, the last guy I wanted to mention is Elijah McGuire for the New York Jets. New York Jets. So here's the thing. Elijah McGuire was placed on the IR earlier on. I think it was during training camp, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened was Elijah McGuire was used last season as a rookie, as like a third down scat back that was pretty decently efficient throughout the entire season. I wouldn't say, he came on late, right? That was his entire thing. He came on late. He was able to kind of show some ability, and perhaps due to the injury to Bilal Powell will not be returning. There is a good chance that Elijah McGuire could be that filler spot, because we know Isaiah Crowell is not the answer for this Jets backfield. I'm sure they know that. He's had a couple good games this season, but they're probably still looking for a guy that they can use. They tried, I think Cannon was the running back. Let me go ahead and confirm this. Where's the running backs here for the Jets? Yeah, they used Trent Cannon this past week a little bit. How much is that going to help? He had about 3 receptions, 12 yards out of the backfield. I think Elijah McGuire is way more talented of a running back. Comparatively to Isaiah Crowell cannot do it all. And with his yards per carry, and especially in some of the matchups they're going to have this season, I can't trust it. I think Elijah McGuire, he is a deeper pickup. But those of you, looking for those kind of a guys, I'd suggest Elijah McGuire. He's a pretty decent stash for this coming week and going forward. So those are the running backs. Just wanted to mention those guys. If you have any questions on anybody else running back wise, go ahead down to the comment section. Let me know. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and start moving on to the wide receiver position, where we are going to be talking about some good players. I think the wide receiver waiver wire for this week has a lot more talent than, in the last couple weeks, it's been pretty good as we've gotten to the end. But as of late, I think this is the most stacked waiver wire that we could potentially see. Just depends on your league, obviously. Depends how many bench slots you have. Just depends how many killers you have in your league. How many guys are really getting after it and trying to win that, that home league championship or that money in your money leagues. Just depends, okay? But as of right now, for those of you who are wondering, yes, Keke Coutee should be picked up. Without a doubt. We all know, and if you don't, Will Fuller this past week. Will Fuller? Yes, Will Fuller. Not the Redskins. I think it's the Bears cornerback, who's Kyle Fuller. Anyway, so Will Fuller, the wide receiver for the Texans, tore his ACL. Unfortunately, he popped off, though. He was the start of the week, baby. He popped off, though, and he's out for the rest of the season. So where does that leave the receiving options for Deshaun Watson, right? That is the main question. Besides DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to get his, who is next, right? Lamar Miller's been producing, but they still have to pass the ball. It's Keke Coutee. Without a doubt, we've seen him produce in the past. He hasn't been healthy as of late. He's been, nagging with that hamstring injury. But going forward, rest of the season, Keke Coutee is a number 2 receiver on this offense. He's probably the number 2 target within this offense, considering Lamar Miller's not really a target option within this team. And I think without a doubt in my mind, Keke Coutee going forward, he should be your number 1 waiver wire acquisition for this coming week, especially if you need a wide receiver position. Even if you don't need a wide receiver position, I would suggest trying to pick him up. Why? Because going forward from here on out, it's going to get pretty barren in that waiver wire. And the way I see it, this is a guy that is going to have potential value going forward. Whether you need him or not, you could end up trading him to other teams that are in need of a wide receiver. Worst case scenario, maybe one of your guys gets hurt. This is a great, wide receiver you can throw in there. We've seen him be efficient thus far this season before. So I want to say for sure, Keke Coutee should be the number 1 waiver wire acquisition going into this week. Unless Marlon Mack is somehow on your waiver wire, which would be shame on you for not having picked up Marlon Mack by now. Goodness gracious. I've been yelling his name from the rooftops for, 4 weeks now. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on. The next wide receiver I want to talk about, David Moore. Now, you might be thinking, David Moore? Who the heck is David Moore? Yes, exactly. Who the heck is David Moore? He's a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and he's pretty much been exactly what Jimmy Graham was last season. Actually, he's pretty much what Paul Richardson was last season. Paul Richardson last season was a quiet, he plays for the Redskins right now, if you're not aware. But he was a quiet wide receiver that had touchdown upside every single week in 2017. Why? Because Russell Wilson was throwing 3 touchdowns a week, and he was scoring a bunch of points. Now, David Moore has become that touchdown upside kind of guy for this team. Besides Tyler Lockett, who's been playing out of his mind, right? And Doug Baldwin, who's been an absolute garbage can. David Moore has been more consistent thus far this season. Now, here's the scary thing, okay? David Moore, as of right now, okay, has 14 targets on the season, 11 receptions. Now, on those 11 receptions, he has 4 touchdowns. That is a scary proposition, but here's the thing. In the last 3 weeks, okay, that the Seattle Seahawks has played, right? Obviously, they had a bye week in week 7, but in the last 3 weeks, he's scored 4 touchdowns. Okay, 4 touchdowns on how many receptions? That's 5. That's 9 receptions, and he has 4 touchdowns. So he's about half of his catches are touchdowns. He's been balling out fantasy point wise. You ready to hear this? In half point PPR, okay, 17.3, 12.2, 17.7. This past week, 4 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown versus the Detroit defense. He plays against the Los Angeles Chargers this week at home. I think David Moore, a guy that's been playing well within an offense that has been moving the ball, and they've been scoring, right? Yes, they move the ball through the ground a lot with Chris Carson, but on top of it, there's going to be potential for guys to catch the ball and catch touchdowns. That's what Russell Wilson is able to do with a very, very good offensive line comparatively last year. I think that, Russell Wilson, he's going to improve. He's finding Lockett. He's finding Ed Dickson, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and David Moore in the end zone. And I think going forward, David Moore is a good idea for a waiver wire pickup. Because of the touchdown upside, man, he's been playing great as of late too. A lot of guys, a lot of people just don't hear about his name. I heard his name 2 weeks ago when he caught 2 touchdowns. Well, you guys probably know what my reaction was. 100% you know what my reaction was. Because it happens with all the wide receivers. If you catch 2 touchdowns on 3 catches, my number one reaction to it is unsustainable. Okay? Unsustainable. Why? Because you just can't do that. You can't catch 2 touchdowns every single week. These guys keep proving me wrong. Just really quickly, now that I talked about catching 2 touchdowns a week, a wide receiver I did not put on this list, and I kind of want to mention at this point, now that I've kind of rejogged my memory, is Tyrell Williams for this week. Tyrell Williams, the weeks prior, he was on a bye week this past week, but let me just go ahead and pull up Tyrell Williams' stats. He's the same player as David Moore. He has a little bit more upside when it comes to points because he is a deep ball threat. He's a guy with a lot of speed and can take the top off of the defense. And he's been utilized within this offense more in the past, especially when Keenan Allen was out for the season. In 2016, he was a 1,000-yard receiver for the Chargers. So we know there is a rapport and that Tyrell Williams he's been a part of this offense for a while, right? He's comfortable within this offense. So I want to just mention Tyrell Williams' stats the last couple of weeks. He's pretty much David Moore. Okay, you ready for this? In the last 3 weeks, okay, and I'm just barring this, right? He did not catch as many touchdowns, but he's been just as efficient as of this season, right? So in the last 3 weeks, he played against Oakland in week 5, 3 receptions, 66 yards. That's it, right? But then he followed that with 3 receptions, 118 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Then he followed that with a game where he had 4 receptions, 118 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Fantasy point-wise, in the last 3 weeks he's played, prior to this past week's bye week, 8 points, in half-point PPR, 25.4 points, and 19.8 points. He's pretty much David Moore. So the question is, now, here it is. Andrew, which one would you rather have? Would you rather have David Moore or Tyrell Williams rest of season? Woo, baby. That is a fantastic question. Well, okay, let's put it in this kind of a perspective. Which offense do I assume is going to score more points? I think it's going to be the Chargers going forward. Now, how many mouths are there to feed within the Chargers offense? You have Melvin Gordon, you have Austin Eckler, you have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams. Okay, you have 4 mouths to feed. On the other side, you have Seattle, where you have Doug Baldwin, you have Tyler Lockett, you have Ed Dickson now, and you have Chris Carson. It's pretty much a 4-4, right? So just off of the top of it, who do I think is going to potentially have the best season? Goodness gracious. I'm going to say it's going to be Tyrell Williams just because of the fact I've seen him produce more. And to be honest, I kind of like their... Actually, let me think about this. Because then again, the Seahawks do play in a division with the Cardinals and the 49ers. And they're not great teams. It's a 50-50, people. But I like Tyrell Williams. Why? Because I've seen him produce in the past. I've seen him be fantasy relevant. I can see him, being a breakout this coming season, going forward as the second half of the season, is on our way. But as of right now, yeah, Tyrell Williams. All right, let's move on to the third guy at the wide receiver position I want to talk about. Well, this is now the fourth guy. Thanks, production team, for getting Tyrell Williams. You'll be fired for that one. Anyway, so let's talk about DeVante Parker. Now, DeVante Parker, as I mentioned last week, I think I talked about the game on Friday. I talked about the Thursday night game on Friday, and I said, DeVante Parker, he had a great game, but he's probably going to get traded right after this, right? He had a showing, and I was convinced that, there's a chance that the Dolphins might trade him. There still is a possibility, but Adam Gase, the head coach of the Dolphins, did come out, and he did mention, yeah, we're not going to trade him. We need the wide receiver depth as of right now, and we don't see us going out and trading for a wide receiver, so we're just going to go ahead and wait and see what happens. Okay, great. You're going to keep DeVante Parker. Now, here's the thing. We're almost at Halloween. Is DeVante Parker a trick or is he a treat? That's the question. As of right now, I'm not certain. I don't know. But what I can tell as of right now, with Kenny Stills coming back this next week, with Amendola out there, that's still 2 receivers within this offense, and they're going to need more help. I think DeVante Parker could have potential within this offense. I mean, he has the opportunity. He has the God-given skill and the ability to go out there with his size, his speed, and his strength. By all means, DeVante Parker could be great. Whether he ends up being great is a total toss-up because we know that he's dealt with injuries in the past. We know that he's been extremely inconsistent in the past. But at the same time, we know, he was a first-round pick. He was a guy that many people thought could be a breakout, could be one of the top receivers in the NFL years back. Hasn't turned into that, but there is still a potential. He's still young. He's a guy you could pick up this coming week. I don't mind it against the Jets. Anyway, that's DeVante Parker for us. Trick or treat? I don't know, guys. Let me know. Let me go down to the comment section. Is DeVante Parker a trick or a treat? Because I know many of you have some strong opinions about this, all right? All right, let's move on to DJ Moore. Now, DJ Moore this past week had a good fantasy game, relevancy-wise. Mentioned him a couple weeks back, but he didn't produce when the gauntlet was calling. But that happens with a lot of players in my videos. When the gauntlet calls, sometimes they go hiding. And that's okay, because that's just fantasy football for us. Where is the Ravens versus Panthers game? Thank you very much. All right, what did you have, DJ Moore? Well, DJ Moore led the team with receiving. He had himself 5 receptions for 90 receiving yards. On top of it, DJ Moore is used a lot in the running game. They use him on jet sweeps, end arounds, a variety of runs, any of these sorts, right? DJ Moore also had 2 rushes for 39 yards, a total of, 129 total yards on 5 receptions. Pretty damn good to me. Now, why does that excite me? Well, we know for a fact DJ Moore will eventually be the number 2 wide receiver here because Torrey Smith cannot sustain it. He's already getting older. Torrey Smith has won a Super Bowl. He doesn't need it, okay? But on top of that, DJ Moore plays against the Buccaneers this week. Now, what does that tell me? The Buccaneers are the worst defense in the NFL, bar none. It's incredible how bad they are. They're atrocious. And it's embarrassing to a point because you would think that they'd be able to fix it. They're bleeding out. Maybe you could stop the bleeding, cauterize the wound, do something, right? It doesn't matter. But they can't. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they cannot fix they're just bleeding out, and I'm suffering because of it. It hurts my soul. Joe Mixon almost beat me this week, okay? Just because he scored 25 in the first half, all right? Goodness, thank you, Joe Mixon, for not scoring in the second half. Could have been a terrible week. But let's get back to DJ Moore. He's been used more and more within this offense. More and more within this offense. Goodness gracious. The puns are here, baby. That's how you know this is going to be a good guy to pick up. When the puns are there unintentionally, my goodness. It's spicy. It's there. It's ready. It's perfectly ripe for this coming week. Week 9 against the Bucs. You may be struggling at wide receiver. DJ Moore is going to have a great opportunity. This entire Panthers offense is going to have a great opportunity. So that's a guy to think about. Number 5, Courtland Sutton. Now, many of you have asked me about Courtland Sutton in the past couple of weeks, primarily because of the fact that there has been trade rumors going around that Demaryius Thomas of the Denver Broncos, a longtime Bronco wide receiver, is going to be traded. Now, is there any relevant news that's coming out of the organization or any other teams that they might be interested? Some people say the Patriots might be interested in services of Demaryius Thomas. Some people say the Packers. Some people say, I don't even know. Doesn't matter. Irrelevant. The question is, will it get done? Will a deal transpire, sending Demaryius Thomas away from this organization? If that does take place, Courtland Sutton can absolutely be a pretty good wide receiver in fantasy football. He's shown in the past that he is capable. He's a big-bodied receiver. He is literally a younger version of Demaryius Thomas, a big-bodied guy that is elusive enough to get open, out-muscle, and just be able to catch the ball over his opponents with ease. He's pretty much the successor of Demaryius Thomas. We saw it as soon as they drafted him out of SMU. So the way I see it this coming week, he is a guy that I wouldn't say, you can pick him up and play, and that is not the case. But if, in fact, you are in a deeper league and you have available bench spots, there is a good opportunity that perhaps a trade goes through. And there's a good chance that Courtland Sutton could end up being relevant this coming year. So if you have an available spot, just consider it. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the last wide receiver I wanted to mention really quickly is Danny Amendola. Had himself a passing touchdown this past week. Threw it to Kenyon Drake, baby. Woo! Kenyon Drake coming back. Had 4 good weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen. He is full sales go. I mean, he's been full sales go on my rankings for the last couple weeks. But that's a different story, okay? Either way, Danny Amendola has been fantastic with Brock Osweiler. Now, as soon as October ends and Brocktober ends, will there be Danny Amendola producing within a Ryan Tannehill offense? Will Ryan Tannehill come back? These are the questions. I don't have the answer to these questions, but I think Danny Amendola, from what he's shown us and from what I can tell from the injury reports coming out of Miami as of right now, Ryan Tannehill will not be playing this coming week. They will be playing the Jets. Brocktober will continue, and I think Brocktober will continue into November, but Brockvember or whatever, I don't know what we want to call it, but either way, Danny Amendola, good waiver wire pickup, a guy that you could play in a wide receiver 3 spot if you're struggling. So anyway, those are the wide receivers for this week, and let's go ahead and move on to the quarterback position for the waiver wire targets of week 9. All right, guys, I mean, it's pretty simple. This is actually a pretty good week of quarterbacks. Comparatively to last week, I think there is a lot more talent and a lot more potential due to the matchups of these players. Now, specifically, Ryan Fitzpatrick, our number 1 quarterback. You saw him on the thumbnail. Ryan Fitzmagic is back. And for those of you Jameis Winston owners, I personally am a Jameis Winston owner, and I do not own Ryan Fitzmagic. And it's unfortunate, but I don't think Ryan Fitzmagic is a for sure lock. Now, why exactly am I saying this? Dirk Carter, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he came out and said, and I quote, literally, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starter for Sunday. Okay, what exactly does that mean? That means, hey, we're going to start him, but if he doesn't end up playing well, we'll go back to Jameis. Okay, we're going to go off of the hot hand. Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick, this past week, he came into the game after Jameis Winston threw 4 interceptions. And what did he do? He went 11 for 15 passing, 194 passing yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. He literally made, for those of you who own Mike Evans, he made your week. He made your week. He had a 75-yard passing touchdown to Mike Evans. He ended up hooking it up. He even had a passing touchdown to O.J. Howard owners. You're welcome. You can thank Fitzmagic, because Fitzmagic, he's sprinkling the dust. He still exists, ladies and gentlemen. This week against the Panthers, I truly don't care. If Fitzmagic is back, baby, we'll see it in the rankings later this week. But for those of you, let's see. What quarterbacks are on bye? Andrew Luck is going to have a bye week. Carson Wentz is going to have a bye week. Now, if you have Eli Manning, Blake Bortles, Josh Rosen, or Andy Dalton, you pretty much you're not worried, right? Because you probably have another quarterback, unless you play in a 2 QB league. In that case, that's even better. Pick up Ryan Fitzpatrick. He is going to be a good pickup and play for the rest of the season, I think. I don't know if they'll give Jameis Winston the job back. Let's be real. The trade deadline is pretty soon. You could see, potentially, I may be the first one that's ever said this. We could see a trade in which we send Jameis Winston to the Giants. Just putting it out there. I'm not 100%, I don't have any sources, but we could see a trade. Or maybe perhaps we trade, Jameis Winston just a little bit. Within the state, he goes over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You never know, people. Jameis Winston, I know he was a first overall pick, but he has not performed. Neither has Marcus Mariota. Those two quarterbacks, they just haven't been great. Comparatively, like guys like Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, who have already made leaps and bounds of improvement, those two other guys, Winston and Mariota, they haven't panned out properly. But it happens, doesn't matter. Either way, Ryan Fitzpatrick, pick him up. All right, number 2, Derek Carr, playing against the 49ers on Thursday Night Football. Now, why exactly am I suggesting Derek Carr? Well, it just depends if you don't have any quarterback options. If you try to go pick up Ryan Fitzpatrick this week and it doesn't end up working for you, Derek Carr is not a bad option. He played pretty well this past week against the Colts defense, and I don't think the 49ers defense is something that you should be afraid of, particularly because of the fact that Josh Rosen was able to tear them apart and make Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk relevant. They looked pretty decent, especially without having a running game because David Johnson is still nowhere to be found. But Derek Carr this coming week, he plays no favorites, right? Martavius Bryant, Jordy Nelson, nowhere to be found. But instead, we have Brandon LaFell, we have Seth Roberts, we have Jalen Richard making plays in the passing game. Oh, Jared Cook, baby, the tight end, making plays. I won't forget about Jared Cook, don't worry. But as of right now, I don't see this as a terrible matchup for them. I know for a fact that the Raiders aren't trying to win games, but are the 49ers trying to win games either? It could be an old-fashioned shootout. There's a good potential of that, so just consider it. My third quarterback I wanted to mention this week, Dak Prescott at home playing against the Tennessee Titans. Now, the Titans' defense has been pretty decent this season, but have they been good enough to stop Dak Prescott at home? With the acquisition of Amari Cooper, will this offense open up? I know Dak Prescott has been better as of late. We know that for a fact. Statistically, he's just been fantastic in the last couple of weeks comparatively to what he was earlier on in the season. Let's just go ahead and read these off for us. In the last 2 weeks of fantasy football, 22.22 points and 33.53 points. Comparatively to the earlier season, he 8 points, 16 points, 10 points, 13 points. Those are not great performances. He has been upwardly trending, and he's been playing better within this offense. He's become, he's turning into that Dak that we saw a couple years back. Okay, anyway. I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, when these things start to flow, I'm telling you, it's not a bad idea, guys. It all sounds right, so it must be right. I don't know. Anyway, so playing against Tennessee at home, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott could have a pretty good week. I'm hoping he does. He's a good waiver wire option, especially because of the fact that he's coming off a bye week. Many people do not own him and have perhaps even dropped him last week for another quarterback. We'll see. Just depends on your league. But Dak Prescott's not a bad idea. The last quarterback I wanted to mention, Alex Smith, a guy that I have not mentioned on this program for a while. Why? Because he just hasn't been great. The offense has not looked good. Yet somehow somebody tell me how the Washington Redskins are, I think they're 5-2. You got to be kidding me. The Washington Redskins, a team that just they're 5-2. I don't understand. They're leading the NFC East. They are the number 1 in the NFC East. Now, you may be thinking, Andrew, obviously they are. Well, hold on. Let's just think about this, okay? Their defense is good. We know that for a fact. The defense, if you had ended up picking them up when I named them as the streaming defenses of the week, it paid dividends. So that's not bad. But I mean, the offense has not looked great. Now, Adrian Peterson, there's a little bit of life, but wide receiver-wise, you had Josh Doxson as your number one wide receiver this past week. At least Jordan Reed was able to do something. There's just hasn't been any sort of life. There is a potential, I talked about Demaryius Thomas potentially being traded, and there's also a potential that Golden Tate gets traded. Washington might be a landing spot for one of these two guys. Just have to watch out and see, man. We'll see about that. But either way, Alex Smith this week plays against the Falcons defense, another very poor defense as of right now in the NFL. So Alex Smith could have a very good opportunity to find himself some fantasy points that he has been missing in the last couple weeks. So as of right now, I like the matchup, and I like Alex Smith. He doesn't turn over the ball often, and if he can end up getting in the end zone twice like he did this past week, there's a good potential that he can be fantasy relevant. Therefore, he's my number 4, and that is the quarterbacks waiver targets for Week 9. So let's go to move on to the next group of guys. We want to talk about tight ends really quickly. I know I'm absorbing time very quickly, but it's Monday, guys. I like to talk on Mondays. There's a lot to talk about. Let's talk about tight ends. Ed Dickson. I mentioned him at the end of the tight end video. I should have ranked him, but hey, really quickly about rankings. If you made it this far in the video, I didn't have a Saturday video. Sorry about that. Should have gave you guys a heads up. Just wasn't feeling great. After the Dodgers took that L, I was going to record. I had everything ready, and I wasn't feeling it. I didn't feel good all day. The Dodgers took the L, and I was done. I was morally and physically just tarnished at that point. I couldn't do it. So sorry about that, but I will be there, guys. On Saturday, I'll be there. Don't worry about that. Anyway, so Ed Dickson ended up showing up. Goodness gracious, it keeps happening, people. The rhymes. Ed Dickson this coming week. Where do I see him? Where do I see him rest the season? Here's the thing about the Seahawks. The Seahawks have already been past their bye week. Ed Dickson sustained an injury this past offseason. That's why he only just showed up as of right now. He was signed in this past offseason to be the tight end replacement for Jimmy Graham. He showed up. He had himself a touchdown on his first catch as a Seahawk. And he's going to be a red zone threat going forward. He's a big-bodied guy, and he's a guy that's going to be a pretty good receiver. 2 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown this past week. He was a lot better than a lot of tight ends, especially the top 10. The top 10 rankings I had. Njoku was a no-show. Trey Burton was a no-show. Jimmy Graham was a no-show. I don't know what to do about that, guys. They're just trash cans. I hate tight ends so much. But anyway, going forward, Ed Dickson, he's a good guy to pick up, especially because we know for a fact that Will Disley, Nick Vannett, those kind of tight ends within the Seahawks offense have been used, and they're going to continue to want to use tight ends. Ed Dickson's not a bad blocker either, so he will make his way onto the field consistently. He's a good waiver wire pickup at tight end if you're struggling. Number 2, Chris Herndon. He did it, guys. He scored a touchdown. 3rd week in a row. This guy's insane. He ended up doing what his job was. His job was to score some fantasy points. He had 1 catch for 16 yards and a touchdown. Congratulations. It's about 9 points and half point. No, it's about 8 points and half point PPR. And he did his job. Done. Is he going to do it again? I can't be certain of it. But the Dolphins defense, they weren't great against the tight end last week. They gave Jordan Thomas, you see the guy underneath Chris Herndon? They gave Jordan Thomas 2 touchdowns the week prior. So, there's a possibility, but those were some broken plays, blah, blah, blah. But either way, Chris Herndon, he's been producing. So think about it, consider it. Next guy, as I mentioned, Jordan Thomas, had 2 tight ends 2 tight ends? What am I doing? What are we doing here? He had 2 touchdowns this past week against the Miami Dolphins defense. It was pretty much a breakout week. Now, why am I considering Jordan Thomas going forward? It's probably because of the fact that Will Fuller did tear his ACL. I just wanted to mention him because there's not a lot of tight ends that I haven't mentioned, and it could be waiver wire, guys to go pick up. If there's Greg Olsen still there, sure, go for it. If somehow Vance McDonald's still on the waivers, go for it, But those are givens. Those are guys that have been producing all season. I understand Greg Olsen's been injured all season, but you know what I mean. Guys that we know can be consistent and have done it in the past. Jordan Thomas, as of right now, he's an unknown commodity, but he is produced. So why not? He's a guy. Consider it. He's a tight end, and he's in a decent offense, especially when they're moving the ball as such. It's something to be aware of. All right, the last tight end I wanted to mention, Jack Doyle. Oh my goodness. it's insane how much the Indianapolis Colts use the tight end position. Ebron, Doyle, and that other guy. He had like the two last names. Where is it? I'm going to find it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here we go. We got the Colts. Good old Mo Alley Cox had a one-handed touchdown. Boom, give me the ball. One catch, 26 yards, and a touchdown. So the crazy thing is, you ready to hear this? All 3 passing touchdowns from Andrew Luck were all to tight ends. Jack Doyle, 6 catches, 70 yards, touchdown. Eric Ebron, 3 catches, 37 yards, touchdown. Mo Alley Cox, 1 catch, 26 yards, touchdown. The tight end position in the Colts offense is crazy. I mean, we know that they use double tight end. We know it. That's why they brought in Ebron. But goodness, Jack Doyle's back, baby. Doyle rules. Anyway, so he's on a bye week this week. If you're struggling that hard and you need the acquisition, go for it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about streaming defenses this week. Again, there's a lot of defenses on bye week. Jacksonville defense is a trash can. Goodness gracious, Jacksonville's so bad. Philadelphia defense is probably the best defense amongst those who are on bye week this week. So there's a potential that you could be in need of a defense. So here we are. Number 1, I mean, this is not in any particular order, but really quickly before I begin, if the Bears defense has somehow made it onto the waivers, they play against the Bills, start every defense against the Buffalo Bills from here on out. You're welcome. Now let's go. Kansas City Chiefs had a pretty good week this past week at home. Play against the Browns. Why is this relevant? Well, the Browns just fired their head coach and their offensive coordinator. There could still be a little bit of disconnect within this offense, especially going into this coming week. The Kansas City Chiefs, they could end up forcing some turnovers from young Baker Mayfield. I see them having some potential. That's why they are one of the streaming defenses for this week. The next streaming defense, we got the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because Marcus Mariota is not, great at, securing the ball. He's a game manager, but we've seen him when he needs to make plays, throw some forced interceptions just like Jameis does. But as of right now, the Dallas defense has been on fire as of late. They're a team to watch out for, and I think this coming week at home, Dallas versus the Titans, they're a good defense. Number 3, San Francisco 49ers versus the Raiders. Now, if you're of the opinion that the Raiders are going to be terrible this season and that this past week against the Colts was a fluke, then by all means, go and pick up the 49er defense. They play them on Thursday. Have fun. All right, and the last defense I wanted to mention, the Houston Texans defense versus the Broncos. I don't know what it is. Here's the thing, though. Many of the teams in the league probably own the Texans defense, so this may not be relevant. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that Keenum's going to get shellacked this week. I have that itch. I don't know what it is. But those are my 4 streaming defenses of the week if the Houston Texans are available. Anyway, so let's go ahead and move on. All right, so that pretty much finishes off our waiver wire experience on what you should be targeting for week 9 of the regular season fantasy football season. So let's talk about the standouts from week 8. Particularly, let's start with the quarterback position. I'm not going to take forever here. I'm just going to give you my thoughts just a tad bit. I don't want to be here all day. I want to see how that Monday night game ended up. I got James White playing today trying to catch me a W. He probably ended up doing that because he's just an absolute monster. So we'll see how that ends up. But Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns. Insane, right? These, if you haven't been here before, these are stats in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. So if these may seem a little bit inflated comparatively to your league, it's 6-point per passing touchdown, -2 per interception. So Deshaun Watson, 5 touchdowns this past week. He scored more points in this past week than he did the 3 weeks prior combined. Just sit on that. Just perhaps maybe Deshaun Watson played a little too good for his own good. But then again, the Miami defense didn't really help their own cause. Deshaun Watson going forward, yes, Will Fuller's absence will hurt, but that's why we have Keke Coutee. That's why Lamar Miller's stepping up, and that's why you have DeAndre Hopkins. So you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Just as long as Watson's healthy, that's all we want. We want him to be healthy. He plays against Denver. He has to play in Denver. His chest issue, I don't know if the elevation is going to bother him, but we'll see. No news on that yet. Patrick Mahomes, number 2. Are we surprised? He's going to win so many leagues. He and by himself is going to win so many leagues. Now, here's my worry, okay? For those of you who perhaps, many of us are going to be playing week 14, 15, and 16 playoffs. So my only thought on Patrick Mahomes is, what if they get to week 16 and they've already clinched the number 1 bye week? Right? They got a bye week in the playoffs and they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. What happens then? In your championship week, when you have Patrick Mahomes and they say he's not playing, be prepared. Just saying, guys. Same thing with Todd Gurley owners. Be careful. All right, number 3 was Derek Carr. That's why I mentioned him as one of my waiver pickups. Had himself a great week against a pretty poor defense that finally showed themselves to be poor defense. I thought the Raiders would come out and just drop a goose egg, but they look decent. Why? Because Derek Carr played well. That's how this team works. If your quarterback is able to, put some points on the board, then guys like Amari Cooper wouldn't look so bad. But then again, Jordy Nelson, Martavis Bryant, no shows. So maybe that's just how this offense works. The number 1 wide receivers just don't ever show up. Anyway, we're moving on. Number 4, Jared Goff. Oh, return of Jared Goff. Todd Gurley didn't steal all of your touchdowns. By the way, Cooper Kupp could make a comeback this week. Coach of the Rams, the name eludes me. Goodness gracious. McVay? Yeah. McVay? Sean McVay? There it is. Perfect. Sean McVay said that there is a good opportunity that Cooper Kupp plays this week. That's a pretty good thing for Jared Goff going forward. Number 5, Cam Newton. You can't doubt Cam Newton. I'm done doubting him. Dude, the guy scores every week. Holy moly. I mean, I'm sure for those of you who own Cam Newton, you know for a fact already, he's too good. He's too damn good. And especially at home, he's even better. Number 6, Russell Wilson. No surprise. Fantastic player. He's going to be, I'm telling you, he gets better as the season goes on. Going forward, he's going to be fantastic. Andrew Luck, another great, fantasy player. I mean, with those tight ends, he's on bye week this week, but he keeps scoring points. Maybe get T.Y. Hilton a little bit more involved. Marlon Mack's tearing it up. This offense, this team, they could be looking on the up and up. All right, number 8, Carson Wentz. I mean, he went to London. He played against a fully stacked. I mean, I don't care what happened the night before. Oh, the Jaguars players were arrested because I don't care. He went in. Those players were there, and he torched that defense. He played fantastic. The Jaguars defense is now a myth, if you ask me. Wentz was awesome. Mitchell Trubisky, another top 10 week. Goodness gracious. And to end out the quarterbacks, we had Kirk Cousins playing a pretty disappointing game, in my opinion. I would have considered, they got shellacked to themselves. But I would have thought Kirk Cousins could have been a little bit better this coming week. Just other than Thielen and Diggs, they have no offense. They were running the ball consistently through Latavius Murray, yet they just stopped giving him the ball. And it's unbelievable. Anyway, let's move on from the quarterback. Let's talk about standouts at the running back position. James Conner, baby, he came back off the bye week. Not off the bye week. Excuse me. He's been off the bye week for 2 weeks, but he's just tearing it up still. So 35 points. Le'Veon Bell. For all of us James Conner owners who don't own Le'Veon Bell, and we're somehow managing to steal points off of the waivers that we've done all season long, please don't come back. We'd greatly appreciate that. Now, for those of us Le'Veon Bell owners, Lev, there's so many points to be had. You can still save me. Come back, please. Anyway, let's move on. Todd Gurley, stud. Marlon Mack, stud. Joe Mixon had 25 points in the first half, and then he didn't have anything in the second half. No problem with me. I won a week because of it. Adrian Peterson, Rumble, young man Rumble. No. This dude is literally old, and he is still tearing them apart. He is just so damn good. Adrian Peterson. Imagine if Darius Geist didn't get hurt, right? This guy would still be on a shelf somewhere. Alvin Kamara is continuing to outplay Mark Ingram. He's getting more opportunities on the ground. Mark Ingram is now a myth. If you ask me, Kenyon Drake, fantastic week. Christian McCaffrey against did you guys see Christian McCaffrey's catch? That tipped, and then he went and oh my goodness, go watch it, please. Christian McCaffrey, touchdown reception against the Ravens. Go look it up if you haven't seen it. Number 9, Chris Carson, fantastic week. And number 10, Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller had a fantastic week. And that's the second week in a row where he's been number 10. So it looking good. All right, wide receivers, Marvin Jones. As I mentioned before, Golden Tate is on the trade block. The Lions have come out and said we are willing to give up Golden Tate for a 4th-round pick. What does that mean? Marvin Jones owners, Kenny Galladay owners, get ready. Especially Marvin Jones owners. My goodness, what a breakout week. That's just incredible. He hadn't played well at all this season. Comparatively to last season, Marvin Jones last season was a He was a wide receiver 1 in like PPR, or sorry, not in PPR. I think in standard leagues and half-point PPR, he was a lower-end wide receiver 1 because of how many touchdowns he had last season. Maybe we can turn the ship around, because Marvin Jones, prior to this, he scored more in this week than he did in any other week by far. The week prior, 4.4. The week prior, 7.3. The week prior, 7.10. Right? And then 14.9. Only in games where he scores those touchdowns and gets about 70 yards is he relevant. This week, 7 receptions on 10 targets, 117 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. What a fantastic game. I started him in one of my leagues. I'm sure some of you did. When you're desperate at wide receiver because of because of bye weeks, and somehow this guy shows up and tears it apart. It feels good, doesn't it? Mike Evans, great week. Thanks to Ryan Fitzmagic, obviously. Sammy Watkins. Okay, we'll see where this turns into. But if Sammy Watkins is tearing it up like this, Tyreek Hill owners are not going to be too happy. Tyler Boyd, start of the week. Fantastic, beautiful. I love you, Tyler Boyd. You did me good. Andy Dalton, congratulations. You somehow did not throw away the week fantasy-wise. But then again, you weren't top 10, so you kind of did throw it away. Moving on, DeAndre Hopkins, monster. Stephon Diggs, great. Antonio Brown, great. Larry Fitzgerald. Woo, baby. Larry Fitzgerald, you're going to make me run for my money. You and Christian Kirk are going to be competing all season long from here on out after I made that bold statement on the Gauntlet video. So we'll see where this turns into. Will Fuller at number 9, unfortunately, out for the season. But number 10, Adam Thielen breaking. I think he's tied the record for most consecutive 100-yard receiving games to start a season. Tied at Calvin Johnson. So he's up there. Anyway, let's go ahead and finish this video out with the last couple guys I want to talk about. The tight end position for week 8, Travis Kelce, number 1. Oh my God, what a surprise. It's Travis Kelce. Jordan Thomas, as I mentioned, one of the pickups. Jack Doyle. What is Jack Doyle doing? Anyway, he's on bye. Jared Cook, fantastic Jared Cook. I knew you'd be a monster. O.J. Howard, okay, continues to be great. Greg Olsen somehow showed up. Ed Dickson, Eric Ebron, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz. Not too many names that were kind of out of sorts. Ed Dickson, I did mention him this past week. Other than that, Jack Doyle and Jordan Thomas were the biggest wows as of this coming week. I'm telling you guys, Jack Doyle will dig into Eric Ebron's production. I know for a fact that, as I mentioned before, earlier on in the video, the Colts love to use the tight end position, but they're not going to be as many touchdowns that pass around as the season progresses. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, that's pretty much it, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't yet, please go down, click the subscribe button to stay, informed. Keep the content coming into your box. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, go down in the comment section. I will try to get to them. It's going to be difficult because there's many questions. And usually I try to get to the questions. I try to get to your waiver questions tomorrow. We're going to do the running back rankings video tomorrow. And then after that, I'm going to just try to straight away get to your questions, because I know waivers for some of us, especially for me in some of my leagues, are on Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning. So I'll try to get to your questions for your waivers. Other than that, it's going to be really difficult to get to your Thursday night game questions. But then again, let's be real. Who are you starting on Thursday night? Who are you starting? Are you starting Derek Carr? Are you starting Jordan Nelson? Jared Cook, perhaps, yeah. But if I don't get to those rankings, I'll probably make it something on Wednesday to try to figure it out. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys. And good luck in your game. Hopefully you won. Those of you who had a performance that you had to depend upon earlier tonight. I got to go check my scores right now. Actually, while we're here, let's just let it run a little bit. What did you do, James White? Did you end up winning me a fantasy week? Come on, baby. Ooh. Yep, that wasn't even close. James White, 20 points. Oh, James White, I love you so much. I love James White, guys. He's literally I love him so much. Anyway, I'll see you guys.